The Pats remained silent at the trading deadline, not adding any help before the clock struck 4 on Tuesday. This is Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening? I am your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, been covering the Patriots for the past 16 years. Also co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles and a sports radio veteran. Coming up on today's episode, we'll tell you how the Pats' chances of getting into the playoffs improved exponentially without adding anyone. Also, we'll tell you why geography and relationships backfired on the Pats front office. But first, the 53 remains the 53. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, to press that thumbs up, hit that thumbs up, give us a like, throw a comment in as well. How do you feel about the trade deadline and the Patriots being quiet? And don't forget to subscribe as we're pushing towards 7,500 subs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We were wrong. I was wrong. On this podcast, going back a couple of weeks ago, I said I thought the Patriots would add a piece or two by the trading deadline. I thought they would be aggressive. I thought Robert Kraft, being 84 years old, tired of losing, the good vibes in New England, you keep on winning, adding a piece or two, adding depth to this roster would be what the Patriots would do. That's what I expected. And so, yes, it's disappointing to walk away from the trading deadline with 0 additions. You're 7-2. You look across the NFL, it is full of parity. There is an opportunity here to take advantage of some other teams falling short of expectations and maybe making more noise than you thought you were going to make before you kicked off the season. So what happened? Why did the Patriots make 0 moves? Of course, they traded Keion White and Kyle Duggar last week. I thought that was in preparation to gather more picks, to use some of those picks in a trade or trades by the deadline. So what happened? Why did the Patriots not make a move? Let's start here. The Patriots, they made a conscious effort to not sell the future unless they felt they absolutely had to. They were being selective with any type of big deal that might have been on the table. How many years left on the contract, the player's age, the injury history, all of those things. And when you're the Patriots, I actually agree with that. I was not expecting a huge move by the deadline because I don't think this team is one move away. If you were Philadelphia, if you were Kansas City, if you were any of those other teams, the Detroit Lions, if you're looking at it and you've made deep runs in the past few years, and you are on your way to another postseason, then you might look at it and say, we are one move away. Let's make that move. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but the Indianapolis Colts traded for Sauce Gardner from the New York Jets. Obviously, the Colts look at their record, look at Daniel Jones and his contract situation, and they say, we might have a shot to win this AFC. Let's go out and get a corner who's been a first-team All-Pro type guy. Let's trade not 1 but 2 future first-round picks along with A.D. Mitchell and bring back Sauce Gardner because we want to make the run. We're pushing those chips in the middle. I don't think the Patriots are in that spot. You look at the quarterback situation, Drake May, fingers crossed he stays healthy, is going to be in New England for a long, long time. And the Patriots, they walked into this season, and I'm sure they mapped out this plan when Mike Vrabel took the job, got on the phone with John Stretch Stryker, brought him into New England, got on the phone with Ryan Cowden, brought him in from New York. And I'm sure those 3 guys sat down with Elliott Wolf. They had a conversation and they said, this is the plan. And the plan is to draft and develop players. We've talked about this. That's how you have sustained success. When you look at the Colts roster, a ton of those guys are homegrown and developed. And you can say that for pretty much all the teams that are truly contending teams, the Detroit Lions, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Buffalo Bills. So many of their players were drafted by the organization and developed. And now they're at that point where they can add a piece or two and make the ultimate run. The Patriots are not there. They're not one move away. So they were not going to sell their future and overpay for somebody that they did not think was ultimately worth it. And I agree with that. I do agree with that, because when you look across this 53-man roster, there are a lot of different holes. And the reason why you have so many holes on this roster to begin with is because you failed to draft well and you failed to develop well. Those things are absolutely intertwined. Another reason why I think the Patriots decided to not make a move before the deadline is because of the ethos, what they've been preaching, what Mike Vrabel has been telling that locker room, which is, we all we got, we all we need. And that's been kind of the catchphrase for the 2025 Patriots. The players in that locker room, they've said it to each other. They've said it to themselves over and over and over again. And the coaching staff has preached it. And if you're going to preach, we all we got, we all we need, when you go outside of the organization and add players, it might create some question about that, especially from the guys who might lose time. Mike Vrabel, Stretch, Ryan Cowden, Elliott Wolf, they've all been very mindful of the culture fit as well. And when you go outside of the organization, when you go to a team to deal for a player that you might not have background on, or not as much background as you wanted, when you make that deal, there's some risk. And when you're 7-2 and you do have the quote unquote great vibes playing out in New England right now, you've got to be delicate about who you add and how they impact the culture. And we went through this last week about the football fit. Not every player is a football fit, a scheme fit. I also think the Patriots looked at some of these price tags and said, a little bit too steep for guys who we don't think are going to move the needle that much. Jakobi Meyers. I mentioned this on the podcast, Kayshon Boutte getting hurt. I would have picked up the phone and called the Raiders and seen what they were asking for regarding Jakobi Meyers. He knows the offense. He can help you with the depth of this team at wide receiver. He can play multiple positions. But Jakobi Meyers went for a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick. And that to me is just a little bit too pricey. I'm not willing to give up that 4th and a 6th to bring in Jakobi Meyers. Jaelan Phillips went to Philadelphia for a 3rd-round pick. That's too pricey for me, in my opinion. Jaelan Phillips is in the last year of his contract. He has had multiple significant injuries. Is he somebody that you're going to bank on for the next 3-4 years? A day 2 pick was too much. Even somebody like Rashid Shaheed of the Saints could bring that speed element to the offense. But Rashid Shaheed was traded to the Seattle Seahawks for a 4th-round pick and 5th-round pick. And as I mentioned, connections and networks and how much do you know about the player you're bringing in, don't overlook the fact that the Seahawks offensive coordinator is Clint Kubiak, who worked with Rashid Shaheed last year in New Orleans. Giving up a 4th and 5th-round pick for a gadget player, a speed element, to me, that would be an overpay. So there are a few factors, right? Being selective because you're not one move away. The draft and development, sustaining the health of your organization. The fact that you could look at the ethos of this team and the culture fit and the football fit of some of these guys that went somewhere else. The price tags. And at the end of the day, Mike Vrabel made the call. We're not in the position to add these guys because we don't think it would be what's best for the franchise. And so they move forward with who they have. And they say to them tomorrow morning when they get to the facility, we all we got, we all we need. Now, would I have done that? I'll talk about a couple of players I would have added at this deadline a little bit later on this episode. But first, it's been said that it takes 2 to tango, and ahead of the deadline, that backfired significantly for the Pats. We'll explain that next. This is Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. You always have a shot to enjoy the game and enjoy the action. It is awesome. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Say you like Jalen's points, rebounds, and assists. Check them out. Can get a bigger payout if you put it on the same game parlay. I love same game parlays. Have had my share of wins using that SGP icon on game days. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Again, new customers, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Help us out here at Locked On Patriots. Countless reports out there before the deadline, right at the deadline, that the Patriots, they were making calls. They were making calls across the league. They were trying to add a defensive end. They were trying to add a running back. Maybe they were trying to add some secondary help. So don't get it twisted. Just because the Patriots did not make a deal doesn't mean they didn't try to make a deal. And I know some of you say, that doesn't matter, Nick. Get it done. I understand. But there's a lot to think about when you look at the deals that happened, and there's a lot to understand and appreciate about the situation that the Patriots were in. And so you can make a ton of calls, but inevitably, as they say, it takes two to tango. There's two sides to a deal. And relationships matter. You've heard me say that before. And relationships matter at the deadline. You're going to make deals with your friends. You're not going to make deals with your enemies. And that brings me to Tennessee. Tennessee was a team, when you look at the roster, when you look at where they're at as a football team, it made sense for Tennessee to trade some of their veterans, especially guys that are on the last year of their contract, or maybe they have a little bit too much money on the contract. It made a lot of sense for Tennessee to trade those guys. And we talked about it over the last couple of weeks. Maybe some of the names, someone like Arden Key, that was somebody you could look at. Maybe Tony Pollard, maybe Draymond Jones. We're talking defensive ends. We're talking a running back. And it would make a lot of sense for the Patriots to look at Tennessee and say, hey, you've got players at positions that you don't really need moving forward into the future. We'll give you some picks because we want to help the depth of our team at those particular spots. But here's the thing. Tennessee reportedly was not dealing with the Patriots. Mike Giardi from Boston Sports Journal, and he has some good sources down in Tennessee. He wrote the following: there has been some conversation league-wide that Tennessee might be unwilling to make deals with New England because the owner, Amy Adams Strunk, continues to think too much about how things ended with Vrabel and is not inclined to help his new team. Ridiculous. This is supreme pettiness versus what's right for your football team, what's right for your franchise. If you are Amy Adams Strunk, the only thing you should be caring about is building the future for Cam Ward, giving a bunch of assets to the next head coach and the GM down there to figure out how they want to build this football team, and being petty over guys that are not going to make much of a difference for you, and saying we're not going to deal with the Patriots because Mike Vrabel went to the Patriots and I fired Mike Vrabel, and yeah, I'm upset at how it played out. To be that petty, it's just ridiculous. Amy Adams Strunk is one of the worst owners in the NFL, and it's not because of this decision. I have said that plenty of times before. I have said that isolated from the Patriots' involvement. She is not a good owner. She stinks out loud as an NFL owner. And people in Tennessee will tell you that. So Amy Adams Strunk was not willing, because of her ultimate pettiness, to work a deal out with the Patriots that would have helped her football team in the long run. Insanity. But you can't put a gun to the head of Amy Adams Strunk and tell her, you got to make this deal. So if Tennessee is unwilling to deal with you, because of the history between that franchise and Mike Vrabel. Well, guess what? You're not getting Arden Key. You're not getting Draymond Jones. You're not getting Tony Pollard. Those guys are not available to you, and that hurts. So wipe out any Titans. Wipe them out. Wipe them off the radar. Not happening. You know what else hurt the Patriots? Geography. And I'm not talking about the Massachusetts taxes and all that stuff. I'm talking about the fact that the Patriots are in the AFC East. And when you look at two teams that were active, they are also in the AFC East. The New York Jets traded Quinnen Williams, all-pro defensive tackle. They traded Sauce Gardner. I mean, it's kind of weird that they traded Sauce Gardner literally months after giving him a big fat contract extension, but here we are. So they traded Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner. The Miami Dolphins, they were also sellers. They traded Jaelan Phillips, as we brought up a little bit earlier. And there were a lot of options on these rosters for the Patriots. If you're looking at Miami, Bradley Chubb would have made sense. Jalen Waddle would have made a ton of sense. Even after Jaelan Phillips was traded, there were a couple of Dolphins that would have helped you, could have helped you. But Miami decided to not trade anybody other than Jaelan Phillips. And I don't know what Miami's doing. They're holding on to Mike McDaniel. They just fired their GM, Chris Greer. I don't know what they're going to do with Tua Tagovailoa in that contract. Miami seems like they can't figure out what's next. And they can't make a clear decision. I saw Joe Shad on Twitter down in Miami, a writer who's been writing for a long time, saying, hey, if they could win this game, that game, this game, that game, they could finish 7-10. What's that do? It puts you in the middle. 7-10, great. So you don't have a great draft pick. You're sitting right in the middle of the draft. You didn't get to the playoffs. You still can't beat good teams consistently. So I don't know what Miami's doing, but they traded Jaelan Phillips and nobody else. Now the Jets, again, they were trading all-pro players. And if you look at the Jets roster, Breece Hall would have made sense. Garrett Wilson would have made a ton of sense. Defensive end Jermaine Johnson would have made sense. But unfortunately, the Jets, guess what? Were not willing to trade in the division. Diana Rossini of The Athletic, she wrote, AFC East teams, plural, reached out to the Jets about potential deals, but New York was reluctant to trade with division rivals, sources say. Now, Miami's not reaching out to the New York Jets. I don't think so. So if it's plural, there's only two other teams in the AFC East. Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots. Why would the Buffalo Bills be reaching out to the New York Jets? Well, the Bills, I think, need a true bona fide number one wide receiver. So maybe they're calling to try to get a deal done for Garrett Wilson. The Patriots, as I said, all three of those guys, whether it's Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, or Jermaine Johnson, all of them would have made sense. And I've always believed that you should do what makes your team better, tend to your own backyard, but what do I know? So Miami didn't trade anybody aside from Jaelan Phillips. It seems like they're having some kind of midlife crisis as a franchise, not knowing what to do. And then you've got the Jets, who were unwilling to trade within their division. You've got the Titans, who didn't want to trade because Mike Vrabel's in New England. So three teams that were trading players and had people available, they were off limits to you. That hurts. And when you look at teams that have connections with Mike Vrabel, Ryan Cowden, Stretch, Elliott Wolf, Tennessee, again, gone. The New York Giants didn't trade anybody. I don't think they traded for anybody. The Green Bay Packers, they're not trading anybody. The Cleveland Browns made one deal, which we'll talk about during the next segment. And you can look at the LA Rams. The LA Rams are not trying to shed pieces. They're trying to make a run with Matthew Stafford at 37 years old. So the connections that you do have, the good relationships that you do have, those teams weren't moving pieces. The teams that had players available were teams that, for the most part, not every single one of them, but they were teams that did not want to deal with you for one reason or another, be it geography/division or pettiness because of a breakup that might have been a little bit ugly. Up next, even though the Patriots did not add anyone at the trading deadline, their postseason chances actually improved. And we'll play deal or no deal coming up next. This is Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Who likes paying rent? Nobody likes paying rent. That's the answer. But if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. Here's what's great about Built. Your rent finally works for you. You're earning points every month on something you already have to pay. Whether you're grabbing food at your favorite local restaurant or heading to the gym, you're still earning rewards. Built has made everyday life feel more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNFL. And make sure to use that link so they know that we sent you. So both things can be true. The Patriots had a disappointing deadline, and I think you could say that because they didn't add anybody, not because they didn't try. You've gone through that, but it is a disappointing deadline to not add help when you're 7-2 fighting for the number 1 seed in the AFC. You can say that it was a disappointing deadline, but also that your playoff chances improved. And I think your playoff chances improved significantly on Tuesday. You start with the New York Jets. They deal Sauce Gardner. They deal Quinnen Williams. You've got 2 games against the Jets this season. You have yet to play them. You play them on Thursday night, short week, after you play Tampa down in Tampa this weekend. And then you play them towards the end of the season. I believe it's week 17. So you have 2 games against the Jets, who have, seemingly run the white flag up the flagpole and quit on 2025. They're looking towards the future, Mike McDaniel or not. And you've got Miami, who you already beat down in Miami. You've got Miami down there at week 18, Gillette Stadium. By the way, I know I just mixed it up, but the New York Jets, they quit on the season. Aaron Glenn, not Mike McDaniel. You get the point. They're looking forward. They're looking towards the future. They know they have no shot. They are embracing the tank by trading 2 first-team All-Pros. In Miami, they trade Jaelan Phillips. They don't add anybody. And so you play them the last week of the season at home. Do you think Miami is going to be pumped and jacked to go up to New England in January to play the final game of the regular season, a season that they know, for all intents and purposes, is over right now? What kind of effort do you think you're going to get from Miami, especially if it's, as we would expect it, to be cold? It's going to be January 4th. You think they're going to be all riled up to do something? Maybe. I find it hard to believe. So that's 3 games. That's 3 games. If you stay healthy, there's no reason why you shouldn't win all 3 of those games. If you win all 3 of those games, I'm not a math professor, but you're 7-2. You add 3 wins. Now you got 10 wins on the season. You don't have to win any other game on your schedule. If you take care of business against the Jets and the Dolphins, you will finish no worse than 10-7. That's good news. And then you look at the rest of the schedule and what the teams that you're going to play did or didn't do. Tampa, you play the Buccaneers this weekend. They did not add anybody. That's good news. Short term. Nobody added. They don't get the juice or the boost from a trade. Now they might get some guys back from the injury report, but they didn't add anybody. Again, the Jets, they're residing in Tank City, USA. Cincinnati, they didn't add anybody to that defense, a defense that was absolutely obliterated and embarrassed by Chicago in Cincinnati this past weekend. They didn't add anybody to the defense. Now, they kept Trey Hendrickson. He wasn't traded for whatever reason, but they didn't add anybody. That's good news. The New York Giants didn't add anybody. What you got is what you got. It's good news. The Buffalo Bills, who you still have to host, did not add anyone. And the Bills need guys. They need players, right? I think they need a wide receiver. I think they need a safety. Maybe the Bills called the Dolphins about Minkah Fitzpatrick. That would have been another fit for them. They are struggling at safety, and they don't have, to me, enough offensive weapons that scare you. They didn't add anybody. The Ravens, they added, and they are a dangerous team. We'll see what their record looks like by the time you play them. And then again, we just went through Miami. They didn't add. They dealt Jaelan Phillips, and they're also residing in Tank City, USA, even though I don't think they want to admit that. So Tampa, nobody added. The Jets, nobody added. Cincy, nobody added. The Giants, nobody added. Bills, nobody added. Miami, nobody added. And you actually took away from the Dolphins and the Jets. So that's good news for the Patriots and their playoff chances. All right, let's get to a little bit of a deal or no deal situation here. I will tell you, the guys that we haven't covered, we already talked about Jakobi Meyers and Rashid Shaheed and Jaelan Phillips, but I want to look at the deals that did not include those players. I want to look at the deals that did not include Tennessee, Miami, and the Jets because, as we've talked about, that wasn't happening. So I want to talk about the deals that were not mentioned earlier, and I want to talk about the deals that did not include Tennessee, Miami, and the Jets. And I want to give you a yes or a no on these deals. Would I have pulled the trigger? And I want you to do the same. And I want you to let me know in the comments, would you have pulled the trigger on these trades as we go through them? I start with Logan Wilson, linebacker from Cincinnati. He was traded to Dallas for a 7th-round pick. I would not have made that deal. The Cincinnati defense is arguably the worst defense in football. They have not been playing Logan Wilson for a reason. They could not get any better than a 7th-round pick for a reason. He has not graded out well this season. And if you look at what you have, if Christian Ellis is healthy, the Patriots probably look at that and say, we don't really need the guy. We don't think he's going to add to the football team. So I'm not going to lose sleep about Logan Wilson. Jair Alexander, cornerback, could have been another possibility. We heard that the Patriots were looking at cornerback help. Injury prone. He really hasn't done much in like 3 or 4 years. Out on Jair Alexander. Greg Newsome, this was a trade that was made in October, cornerback. Cleveland was, looking for a cornerback in return. So I don't think that makes any sense for the Patriots. You wanted to add to the cornerback room. You did not want to swap cornerbacks. Odafe Owe was traded in October by Baltimore. Baltimore got Alohi Gilman, who has been terrific and a great fit for the Ravens defense. So I don't think that was a fit for you. But there are 2 deals that I would have likely made, and they're not big deals, but Trevor Penning, New Orleans Saints offensive lineman, he was traded to the Chargers, who have lost Joe Alt this week for the season, and Rashawn Slater before the season started. So they lost both of their awesome tackles to injury. Terrible luck for the LA Chargers, but Trevor Penning went to LA for a 2027 6th-round pick. Now, I'm not telling you Trevor Penning's been good or very good. He hasn't, but he has experience. He has some versatility. And I probably would have taken that swing and given up a 2027 6th-round pick to add to my offensive line room. Another deal I would have made was for defensive end Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who went from Cleveland. He was traded from Cleveland for a 2026 7th-round pick. And I would have made that deal to get some insurance on the edge. I've always kind of liked his game. So I would have made that deal. Those are the 2 deals that I would have made. By the way, there wasn't a single running back that was traded in October or November. So you weren't going to trade for a running back because they obviously were not available, even though we thought some of them might have been. So when you look back at it, am I going to get upset that the Patriots didn't trade for Trevor Penning or Joe Tryon-Shoyinka? No. I mean, we're talking about guys that are not going to play a ton of football for you, and you might have better options in-house. Neither deal is going to move the needle. The Patriots, I understand if they're looking at it and say, we're going to stick with Marcus Bryant and Vidarian Lowe and Ben Brown. We're going to stick with the guys that we have. They know our scheme. We've been working with them all year. Don't forget, Trevor Penning, if you look at his situation, I believe he's on the last year of his deal. I want to look this up before I tell you something that is not correct. I'm pretty confident. I looked it up earlier before the show. You would think I'd remember. Yeah, so he's going to be a UFA. So when you look at it, the fifth-year option was not picked up on his deal, or at least he's traded there. So Trevor Penning is really going to be a rental, and so is Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. So both of those guys are rentals. Are they moving the needle? No. So I'm not going to get all worked up about it. And when you look at it, the reality is the guys that would have helped you and been better pickups than those two I just mentioned, again, geography, division, relationships, you're not going to get a deal done for those guys. And nobody else moved of consequence. You're not going to deal for Quinnen Williams. He's not going to get dealt to you because he's a Jet. Sauce Gardner, he's not going to be dealt to you because he's a Jet. So when you look at the realistic options that you had and the guys that were actually traded, there just wasn't a lot there. There really wasn't. All right, that wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Thank you for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickCRadio, and don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. Hit that like button and subscribe. For your second listen, get a double dose of Locked On NFL with Tyler, the Madman Roland, and Tony Wiggins. Find Locked On NFL, that podcast, on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day. We will see you on Thursday with the crossover edition. Get you ready for the Bucs and Patriots on Sunday. Till then, be well.